Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 3 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. Alright, on to the stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Ober Newton. Stay in my own lane, you got it. Happened at my last job, but was reminded of it this morning. The backstory: I worked in a middle management position that coordinated an after-hours care program for adults. I had a micromanaging dinosaur for a boss. Let's call her Hetty. Hetty oversaw the day-to-day operations as well, and I shared an office with the direct manager of that program. Given they operated at different times, we often shared clients, but as I did my own admin work during business hours, I often briefly visited the clients in their day activities to ask them about their preferred activities for my program. I had no real opportunity to consult them at any other time, particularly as Hetty decreased my allotted admin time further and further. She just loved tightening the noose and took particular delight in nobody ever being able to get comfortable in their role, firmly believing that if she kept us all on our toes, she would get more work out of us. It was stressful and incredibly draining. Another strict rule of Hetty's was that despite female staff being allowed to provide personal care, showers, changing, etc. to male clients, she did not allow male staff to provide intimate care to female clients. This will be important to the story. And yes, I'm fully aware this was gender discrimination, and I argued the point multiple times, but was overruled. The only thing that Hetty loved more than setting arbitrary rules was catching us out breaking them. It was near impossible to work the position without breaking any of her rules, one of which was that I was not allowed to involve myself in the day service. Involvement basically constituted me being anywhere out of my office and near clients during the day. She would sneak quietly around the building, listening around corners, and then leap out suddenly to catch the offender. One day, one of the clients would be transitioning from day activities straight into my program for the evening. The entire premise of the program was client choice, and as such, I needed to know what my client would like to cook for dinner so I could purchase groceries before I clocked off. I was discussing it with the client when Hetty zoomed in around the door and asked to see me in her office. She dressed me down for interfering in the other program and told me in no uncertain terms that I was to stay completely away from it and in my own lane, or I'd be facing disciplinary action. Fine, I knew it would come back to bite her. Mere days later, the program was winding up for the day with only a few late-staying clients remaining, along with one male worker. One of the female clients had a need for a change of clothing. The male worker came and knocked on the door of my office to let me know the client needed changing. Cue Malicious Compliance. "Jane needs a change of clothes," I responded loudly, knowing Hetty was next door in her office with the door wide open. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'd love to help, but unfortunately you're currently working with the day program, and I've been expressly instructed I'm not allowed to interfere. Maybe Hetty can help. I'm sure she's in her office." Worker knew all too well the crap we put up with from Hetty, gives me a sly grin, and moves on to Hetty's office to interrupt a phone call she was having because, hey, the client comes first. I dutifully stay at my desk, listening to her ask the worker to seek my assistance, knowing full well that she heard every word of the previous conversation. Worker repeats my refusal to her, and she goes off after much grumbling to assist the client. Of course, Hetty ripped me a new one for not being a team player later on. I simply pointed out her insistence earlier in the week that I not involve myself in any way with the other service. She scoffed and told me I was being deliberately obtuse, and of course, if there was a need, I was duty bound to meet it. I reiterated that it was impossible for me to know which tasks would be deemed dutiful, and therefore innocently followed her instructions to the letter. She had nothing to come back with on this occasion. It did, unfortunately, escalate her bullying with me, but it was on that trajectory regardless. I ultimately burned out a couple of years later and had to leave, but that one act of malicious compliance remains a bright spot in what was otherwise almost a decade of appalling treatment. I've been in a new role for over 2 years where I have incredibly supportive management and colleagues, but I still see Hetty around, and every time I flip her the bird. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Somerset76. It says, "Thank you for cheering me up. I've had so many horrible Hatties in my life. Good to see you stand up to her." OP responded and said, "You're welcome. She's still in the role, no idea how. Even though I knew I'd wear it later, it was still so gratifying to finally get a small win over her." You'd think that after being treated like this for a while by the same person, that OP would be out there knocking on doors and trying to get a different job. I understand that job markets can be crap, and I also understand that you can get attached to the people you're caring for and might not want to leave them to ensure they're getting the best care. But having a boss like this makes going into work every day an absolutely crappy task. OP, I can't believe you lasted another 2 years until you got burned out. I think I would have said something to her that would have gotten me fired a lot more quickly than that. This story comes to us from Background Nerd. It is our job to know. This starts as Malicious Compliance and ends with petty revenge. It's a fairly long story, but I think I can keep to the essentials. A place I worked at in 2004 had 3 DBA teams, database admins. The team I had been on since I joined was tight, and on-call rotation was pretty easy. If anyone got paged for a database that you were the primary on, then you had to buy the team drinks. You rarely got paged. So, end of an era. Do you remember Al Bundy doing commercials to save big money on long-distance phone calls? That was us. Cell phones and free long distance put us under. During the death throes, they had massive layoffs and combined 30 DBAs on 3 teams into one team of 7. I made the cut. However, they refused to offline any systems, so the workload of 30 remained. My old boss did not make the cut, and my new boss was a toxic butt kisser. I don't even care anymore. His name was Steve. Worst boss ever. He would defend anyone but someone on his team. I believe he legit thought throwing his people under every bus made him a team player. Other departments quickly figured out, blame them, and he will blame his people. So they did. My first on-call rotation on this new combined team was utter hell. The pager went off every 10 to 15 minutes. Messages like, Job 104, completed step 5. Job 110, starting step 12. Job 110, completed step 12. In case you did not know, 1. These are not things you page out for. 2. I have no idea what any of those jobs are, where they are kept, or what to do about them if they should fail. No idea. On and on all night long. You can't ignore them as you might miss a real message about an actual database problem. So you get 0 sleep, and with the diminished staff, they expect you there the next day. When I started ranting the next day, the folks left from that particular team said it's always been that way. That was nuts, and we are short-staffed, so I set out to fix the problem. I looked at every message that got sent to the DBA pager queue and added the prefixes info or warn to every message, kept it short for the pager. Then I changed the pager daemon to route anything starting with info to email and only route warn to pagers. Worked like a champ. We went from 50 pages a night to maybe 1 per night and often none. One day, a team meeting was called and Boss Steve was upset that a print job had failed and our on-call person, me, did not respond. Why would I respond to a print job failure? We database admins have nothing to do with that. When you get a page, you respond, period. Why would I get a page that a print job failed? Because we always have. Didn't you get the page? Oh, that. No, I fixed that a while back. DBAs only get paged for DBA stuff now. What? You need to put it back the way it was. Okay, I am cutting a bunch out here for brevity. I said no. The people who are actually responsible should get paged, not us. We ended up in a shouting match. He was yelling he would take me to HR, and I told him that worked both ways as he was flat out abusing us and not letting us sleep, and expecting us in at 8 a.m. sharp. That slowed him down a little, and then he calmly said, "Our department must know everything that happens overnight so we can answer for it in the morning. Make sure we get the pages." Oh, the evil light bulb went off. I smiled and said, "Yes, sir." Ding, ding, ding. Our department, eh? We, eh? Okie dokie then. I reworked the pager demon so that all pages went to his pager, but left the code that only routed Warren to the on-call pager in place. Now we and our department know everything that happens overnight. Yes, I am so very proud of that one. I slept soundly that night. The next morning, I kept waiting for him to come over and either tear into me again or admit it was a horrible night, that he did not grasp how bad it was. But now, let's get a better fix in place. I was disappointed. He said nothing to me at all. Did he get all those pages? I double-checked that everything was routed to his pager, and it was. He just would not admit he was wrong. I was impressed. I thought he was tough but stupid, getting all those pages every night and never saying a word. End of Malicious Compliance. Start Petty Revenge. A few weeks later, I was doing an upgrade outage overnight. We were getting to a critical point and needed a decision to roll back or continue and exceed the outage window. I paged him several times. No answer. We all sleep through pages from time to time, so I rolled back and emailed all concerned. No big, but he never got back to me. That was odd. The next Monday, I mentioned it to the team, and several folks said, yeah, he does not enter pages after hours anymore. Haha, he was not tough. He just started turning his pager off before bed. Still too chicken to admit he was wrong. A few weeks later, I was on call again, and late Sunday night, I got paged to come in immediately. To keep it brief, the system that went down was a federally mandated system with severe financial penalties for downtime beyond a limit. We were reaching that limit. It was a huge amount of money. All hands on deck. Even the CEO and CIO were there. Developers, sysadmins, network, security, and DBA with their bosses, with one exception, were all on laptops in the conference room. This was big. Thank gosh it was not a DB problem. It turned out to be network. The CIO said he appreciated us and wanted us all there until it was resolved, just in case. No problem. Sometimes that is the life we choose. At about 5 a.m. on Monday after a long night, the CIO says to me, "Hey, I have paged your boss like a dozen times. He's not answering." Oh, glorious day. With a shrug, I very casually say, "Oh, yeah, Steve never answers pages at night." He said nothing out loud, but I saw his face cloud up. About 7:30, issues are resolved, and we are watching transactions flow across to the feds. I am watching the DB to make sure the huge backlog is not gumming it up, but I'm just watching as all is well. At about 7:45, old Steve comes strutting in the door, fresh-faced with a full night's sleep. As he walks past the full conference room, he does a double take and stops. When he sees all the heavy hitters and us plebs in the room, his face falls. He knew right then he screwed up. The CIO says, loud and mean, "Where have you been?" Then the CIO and CEO take him out of the room. I have no idea what was said, but I bet it was not pretty. Laugh out loud. The CIO and CEO come back in about 10 minutes. They heartily thanked us all for the dedication, then sent us home and said don't come back until tomorrow. Good leaders. I came in the next day and no Steve. I never saw him again. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Cool Beans Chili. It says, "Steve always threw his team members under the bus. You returned the favor by throwing him to the sharks. Well played, good sir." OP responded and said, "I like the way you put that." Another commenter called Kenneth said, "Man, I have no idea what goes through people's minds when they think that it's too much to admit fault or apologize. I mean, I guess I understand the narcissistic and sociopathic takes on that because they genuinely think they did nothing wrong. It's delusional as F, but that process makes sense. I don't get people who know they did something wrong and don't have the sack to admit it. OP responded and said, "Same here, buddy. We all make mistakes, fess up, learn from it, and move on." I guess another way that OP could have handled this one would have been to answer every single page that came in and then bill the company for all the extra overtime hours. I mean, if they're going to inconvenience the heck out of you, make them pay for it. Let it hurt them in the pocketbook. This story comes to us from Story Skeller. "You want me to clear the dead grass or I'll be fined? I will clean exactly my property." This story started in 2017, was repeated every year until this year, and I have promised my father-in-law to repeat the compliance if it happens again. My in-laws used to live just outside of town. They moved this past fall to my mother-in-law's home island, and we moved in their place. And when I say just outside, I mean about 2 meters outside of the city plan to be exact. And important for later, the city plan reached up to the middle of the dirt road that separated their property with the neighboring one. So back in the spring of 2017, my in-laws received a letter from the city council about cleaning their property from dead grass in preparation for summer due to fire hazards, or they would be fined. The letter and the deadline, end of May, were normal. What wasn't normal was the area named. It was their property, the property next to them inside city limits, and the road in between. My father-in-law took the letter to the council and explained that the property next to him didn't belong to him and couldn't clean it. They appeared to accept it, but something was nagging him. Now, my father-in-law had worked in exactly 2 companies in life, both of them handling big government contracts, and his main job was to take care of red tape and government bureaucracy. So he found the exact law that said that the owner was responsible for their property and the city was responsible for any roads and any properties inside city limits that an owner couldn't be found. He had also found, through his connections, that the local council was under investigation for misappropriation of funds, including the funds for cleaning lots that were considered fire hazards. The tactic they used was to include lots that fell under their responsibility to nearby owners, and either intimidate with the fear of a fine to clean them, or fine them and pocket the money. My father-in-law decided to become creative. First, he gathered all the plans related to his property and the one next to him. Next, he cleared his property. He was planning to do that anyway. But only that. He cleared the part of the road that fell outside city limits, and then he waited. The deadline passed, and about 10 days later, a hefty fine arrived. My father-in-law challenged officially. The council tried to enforce the fine. My father-in-law challenged it again, presenting his evidence on an open forum of the council. The council insisted they were on the right, and if my father-in-law didn't pay, they would take legal action. My father-in-law agreed happily to the legal action. This led to the court appointing an outside inspector to check the property, the city plans, and the work my father-in-law had done. The council not only lost the case and had to pay legal fees, but were forced to an outside audit that led to a couple of councilmen facing criminal charges. Every year since then, my father-in-law used to clean his property and exactly up to the middle of the road next to him. That duty has been passed down to me now, which I fulfilled this year. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Bakatari. It says, "Well, I'll be darned. The grass is actually browner on the other side of the fence. After seeing it could be done successfully, do you know if anyone else followed your dad's lead and challenged the council?" OP responded and said, "From what I know, his friend certainly did." The fact that they couldn't find the owners of the property that was actually within the city limits was interesting to me, so I looked into adverse possession, which is a legal doctrine that allows a person to claim ownership of land under certain conditions. My thoughts on that being, OP has documentation from the city asking them to clear both lots like they're the owners of the lot already. If they were to do this and get past the years needed for adverse possession, they might be able to take ownership of that property and either sell it off or rent it out. Adverse possession law states 5 to 20 years. I'm not sure exactly what it is where OP is, but that could be a long game that OP might want to play. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to the favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.